My parents always defended my sister even after she tried to hurt me, but years later I found out she was sleeping with my husband and claiming my daughter might be hers. Now she's alone, begging for forgiveness, and I'm finally free. I grew up in a house where survival meant being quiet, where the smallest mistake became ammunition, and where my own sister seemed determined to make sure I never felt safe. Her name was Melissa, 2 years older than me, and from the moment I can remember, she treated me less like family and more like a rival she was determined to crush. To everyone else, she was the golden child. Perfect smile, straight A's, charming in public. Teachers loved her, relatives spoiled her, and my parents, especially my dad, thought the sun rose and set on her every word. But behind closed doors, Melissa's sweetness curdled. She had this way of turning everything into a weapon. If I got a better grade on a test, she'd accidentally spill juice on my homework. If I made a new friend, she'd whisper lies until they stopped talking to me. She'd yank my hair when no one was looking, then cry crocodile tears the second I reacted. And my dad? He always took her side. "Stop being dramatic," he'd say. Melissa would never do that. It wasn't just petty cruelty, either. By the time I was 12, it had escalated. I'll never forget the day she pushed me down the stairs. I was lucky, I only fractured my wrist, but I still remember my father standing over me in the ER, scowling, saying, "Don't blame your sister. You should have been more careful." That was the moment I realized that in my family, truth didn't matter. Appearances did. And Melissa was untouchable. By 13, I lived in constant fear. Melissa had discovered that she could make me cry without even touching me. Sometimes she'd stand in my doorway at night, whispering that she wished I'd never been born. Sometimes she'd take my things, my favorite sketchbook, the necklace my grandmother gave me, and throw them away, daring me to tell on her. I never did. What was the point? Things came to a breaking point when I was 14. One night at dinner, Melissa dropped a piece of raw chicken onto my plate when no one was looking. I didn't notice until I'd already taken a bite. Within hours, I was doubled over, sick as I'd ever been in my life. When my mom found me on the bathroom floor, shaking and pale, she rushed me to the hospital. My father tried to downplay it. Food poisoning happens, but the look in my mom's eyes told me she knew better. For the first time, someone was on my side. When we got home, my mom pulled me aside. "I know what she did," she whispered. "I should have stepped in sooner." The next week, she signed me up for self-defense classes at the community center. At first, I thought it was just another after-school activity. But those classes became the turning point of my entire life. Learning how to fight back didn't erase the years of fear, but it gave me something I'd never had before: confidence. For the first time, I didn't feel completely powerless. Melissa noticed, too. The first time she tried to corner me in the hallway and I blocked her shove, the look on her face was priceless: shock, then rage. From that day on, things changed between us. She still tried to torment me, but I wasn't the same scared little sister anymore. I could defend myself, and that scared her more than anything. But of course, my dad refused to see it. To him, Melissa was still perfect, and I was still the difficult one. My mom stayed quiet most of the time, caught between protecting me and keeping peace in the house. I thought things might get better as we grew older, but instead they got worse. By the time Melissa went off to college, I was 16 and exhausted from years of fighting battles no one else seemed to care about. She'd still come home on weekends just to stir up drama, and I counted down the days until I could leave for college myself. What I didn't know was that Melissa wasn't done destroying my life yet. She'd already taken my childhood. Soon, she'd go after everything else. By the time I was 18, I thought the worst of Melissa was behind me. She was away at college most of the year, and even though she came home on breaks to stir things up, I finally had stretches of peace. I poured myself into school, into art, into anything that reminded me I wasn't just someone's punching bag. When I left for college, I told myself this was my chance to start over. I picked a school far enough away that Melissa wouldn't just drop by, and I promised myself I'd never let anyone treat me the way she had. That's when I met Daniel. Daniel was charming in a way that made me feel dizzy. He was older, confident, the kind of guy who could make friends in any room. He saw me sketching one day in the quad and asked if he could buy me a coffee. That coffee turned into late-night study sessions, long walks across campus, and eventually, a relationship. For the first time, I felt chosen. Not because someone needed me to be useful, not because I was the spare kid in the family, but because someone actually wanted me. We dated all through college. Sure, there were warning signs. Daniel flirted too easily, drank too much at parties, and sometimes disappeared for hours without explanation. But I told myself no one's perfect. After everything I'd been through, I wanted to believe I finally deserved happiness. When he proposed right after graduation, I said yes without hesitation. My parents were thrilled. Even Melissa pretended to be happy, though I caught the look in her eyes, that glint of jealousy she never quite hid. My mom helped plan the wedding, my dad gave a stiff but proud speech, and Melissa stood beside me in the photos with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Married life started out sweet. Daniel and I moved into a small apartment, and a year later, we welcomed our daughter, Lily. Holding her in my arms was the first time I truly understood what unconditional love felt like. She was mine, and I swore I'd protect her from the kind of pain I'd grown up with. But life has a way of circling back to the wounds you thought you'd healed. By the time Lily was 3, cracks in my marriage were hard to ignore. Daniel worked late constantly, and when he was home, he was glued to his phone. He brushed off my questions with easy excuses, work emails, just catching up with a buddy. I wanted to believe him, so I did. Then came the nights he didn't come home at all. The mornings he reeked of perfume that wasn't mine. The credit card charges I couldn't explain. I confronted him more than once, but he was a master of deflection. You're imagining things. You're paranoid. Stop trying to control me. And every time, I let it go, because I didn't want my daughter to grow up in a broken home. But deep down, I knew the truth. And then, the truth exploded in my face. It was a Sunday afternoon. We were at my parents' house for dinner, me, Daniel, Lily, Mom, Dad, and of course, Melissa. My mom was in the kitchen, my dad was fiddling with the TV remote, and Lily was playing on the floor. Daniel and Melissa were talking in low voices at the dining table. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard Melissa's laugh. That laugh. The one I knew too well. I turned my head just in time to hear her say, "You know she'll never leave you. She's too weak." Daniel smirked. "Yeah, but she doesn't have to know about us." My blood went cold. I stood there frozen, the sound of my daughter's toys clattering in the background, as my husband and my sister admitted what I'd been too afraid to believe: they were having an affair. When I finally found my voice, it came out like glass. "How long?" They both froze. Melissa's smirk faltered, Daniel's face drained of color. My mom walked in at that exact moment, holding a tray, and nearly dropped it when she saw my expression. "What's going on?" she asked. And then, as if she couldn't help herself, Melissa said it. The words that shattered everything. "Lily might not even be yours." The room went silent. My dad looked like he'd been punched. My mom's tray clattered onto the table. And me? I felt the floor vanish beneath me. Melissa tried to laugh it off, saying she didn't mean it like that, but the damage was already done. The truth was out. My sister and my husband had been betraying me for years, and now there was a chance the little girl I loved more than life itself wasn't even mine. I can't describe the kind of rage and heartbreak that hit me all at once. My chest burned, my hands shook, and I wanted to scream until the walls cracked. Instead, I scooped up Lily and walked out the door without looking back. That night, I stayed at a hotel. I held my daughter close while she slept, tears streaming down my face, trying to figure out how my life had fallen apart so completely. And the worst part? A tiny voice inside me whispered, "You should have seen this coming." Because Melissa had always wanted to take everything from me. And now she had. The night after I left that dinner, I barely slept. I lay in the hotel bed with Lily's tiny body pressed against mine, staring at the ceiling while questions ripped through me. How long had it been going on? How much of my marriage had been a lie? And the worst one, was my daughter even mine? By morning, I knew one thing: I couldn't go back to pretending. I drove Lily to my parents' house, because I needed answers. My mom met me at the door, face pale and tight. She pulled me inside before my dad or Melissa could see. "I heard everything," she whispered. "I believe you. I should have protected you years ago, but I won't stay quiet now." Her words broke something in me, years of silence, of swallowing pain. I cried in her arms like I was a child again. When I pulled back, I asked, "Where's Dad?" She grimaced. "He's in the garage with Melissa. He doesn't want to believe it. He keeps saying you misunderstood." But as if summoned, my dad came inside with Melissa right behind him. Her arms were crossed, her expression smug but nervous. My dad looked at me and said, "Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you're exaggerating." I set Lily down with a toy and stared straight at him. I heard them. With my own ears. They admitted it. Melissa opened her mouth, but my mom cut her off. "Don't you dare deny it. I heard you too." For the first time, Melissa faltered. Her confident mask cracked. My dad's face twisted. He turned to Daniel, who had just walked in behind her, looking like a ghost. "Is it true?" Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was enough. That silence changed everything. My mom's voice shook with rage. "Get out," she said to both of them. "You've poisoned this family for long enough. You've taken everything from her. From me. From all of us." My dad tried to protest, but my mom's fury burned hotter. "No. You've defended her for years while she destroyed her sister. You turned a blind eye, and look where we are now." For once, he had no response. Melissa exploded, screaming that we were overreacting, that Daniel still loved her, that Lily would choose her one day anyway. My mom slapped the table so hard it rattled. "Enough. You're not welcome here anymore. Don't expect another dime, another ounce of support, or a place in this house. You are no daughter of mine." The words hung heavy in the air. My dad flinched. Melissa's mouth fell open, but no sound came out. Daniel reached for me, tears in his eyes. "Please. We can fix this." I stepped back like his touch was fire. "You destroyed everything. There is no fixing this." He broke down right there in my parents' kitchen, babbling excuses, swearing he still loved me, that Melissa meant nothing. But I wasn't listening. My mom wasn't listening either. For once, Melissa's lies and charm had no power. That night, I filed for divorce. The weeks that followed were chaos. Daniel tried to fight it, sending me flowers, letters, late-night messages begging me to think about Lily. Melissa tried to call, then tried to show up at my apartment, shouting through the door until the neighbors threatened to call the cops. I blocked them both. My dad stayed quiet, torn between the daughter he'd always favored and the wife who had finally drawn a line. My mom, though, stood firm. She came with me to meet a lawyer. She sat beside me while I cried over paperwork. She reminded me, over and over, you deserve better. You always have. For the first time in my life, she wasn't silent. The hardest part was the paternity test. My lawyer said we needed to know, for custody. Waiting for those results was agony. Every time Lily looked at me with her big brown eyes, I felt both love and terror. What if Melissa had been right? What if the little girl who gave me strength wasn't even mine? When the results came back, the world tilted again. Lily wasn't biologically mine. I thought that news would destroy me completely. And in some ways, it did. I felt like the ground opened beneath me, like my entire life had been a cruel joke. But then Lily woke up from her nap, toddled into the living room, and climbed into my lap with a sleepy mommy. And I realized something. Biology didn't matter. She was still my daughter. She was still the little girl I had loved and cared for every day of her life. The papers couldn't erase that bond. But the law did. The divorce settlement meant Daniel got custody, since Lily wasn't mine by blood. I fought, I begged, but in the end, the judge's hands were tied. Losing her nearly killed me. Melissa thought she'd won. She sent me a message, gloating that I'd wasted years playing house with her child. But by then, her own life was falling apart. My mom had cut her off completely, my dad was distancing himself, and even Daniel was crumbling under the weight of his own lies. I watched from a distance as their perfect little fantasy imploded. Daniel lost his job after rumors spread at his office. Melissa burned through her savings, expecting my parents to bail her out, only to find the bank closed for good. And me? I started over. It wasn't easy. I cried myself to sleep most nights. I missed Lily so much it physically hurt. But I also felt something I hadn't in years, freedom. For the first time, Melissa wasn't looming over me. Daniel wasn't lying to my face. I was alone, but I was free. In the months after the divorce, my world felt quieter than it ever had before. Too quiet, almost. I'd come home to an empty apartment, no toys scattered across the floor, no toddler giggles echoing through the hallways. I missed Lily with every fiber of my being, and some nights the grief clawed at me so hard I thought I might cave and call Daniel, just to beg for a chance to see her. But I didn't. I knew begging would only give them more power. Instead, I threw myself into rebuilding. Therapy twice a week. A new job in a new part of town. Small routines, morning runs, sketching in the park, cooking for one, that slowly began to stitch me back together. And even though my heart ached for Lily, I reminded myself of something important. I was finally free of Melissa. For the first time in my life, her shadow wasn't standing over me. About 6 months later, the messages started. At first, I ignored the unknown numbers. Then one came with a name attached. Melissa. Her first text was short, "Can we talk?" I blocked it. The second came from a different number, "I'm sorry. Please, I need you." Blocked again. But she was relentless. Emails, social media accounts, even handwritten letters slid under my apartment door. She tried every angle, apologies, excuses, even self-pity. I've lost everything. Mom won't answer my calls. Dad barely looks at me. Daniel doesn't want me anymore. I have no one. Reading those words should have given me satisfaction. And part of me, the part still raw and bleeding, wanted to gloat. But mostly, I felt tired. So tired of the cycle. Melissa destroyed, Melissa begged, Melissa repeated. This time, I didn't engage. Then came the final straw. One evening, I came home to find her sitting on the steps of my building. She looked nothing like the polished, smug sister I grew up with. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes hollow. When she saw me, she jumped up. "Please," she said, voice trembling. "Please, just hear me out." I stood there, keys in my hand, debating whether to walk past her or listen. Against my better judgment, I gave her 5 minutes. She poured it all out. How Daniel had left her. How she was drowning in debt. How our mom refused to speak to her and our dad only sent short, cold messages. How she couldn't get a steady job because word about her and Daniel had spread, and nobody wanted the drama. She cried, begged me to forgive her, said she didn't want to lose the only sister she had. For the first time, I spoke without fear. My voice was calm, steady, even. "You lost me a long time ago. When you pushed me down the stairs. When you poisoned me. When you laughed while taking everything I had. You didn't just lose me when you slept with my husband. You never wanted me to begin with. You wanted to ruin me. And you almost did." Her face crumpled. She dropped to her knees, sobbing, whispering, "Please, I don't have anyone else." I shook my head. "That's not my problem anymore. I don't owe you my forgiveness. I don't owe you anything." Then I walked inside and left her there on the steps. That was the last time I saw Melissa. Since then, my life has been different. Not perfect. I still wake up some nights reaching for Lily, and the pain of losing her never fully leaves. But I've built a life that belongs to me, not defined by Melissa's cruelty or Daniel's betrayal. My mom and I talk often now. She tells me she regrets staying silent for so long, and though I can't change the past, I'm grateful she finally stood by me when it mattered most. My dad. Well, he stays on the edges, always torn, always conflicted. But that's his burden, not mine. Sometimes I hear about Melissa through distant relatives. How she's moved from couch to couch. How she burns bridges faster than she can build them. How she still tries to play the victim. And maybe once, that would have pulled me back into her orbit. But not anymore. I don't hate her. Hate would mean she still mattered. What I feel now is nothing. And nothing, after a lifetime of pain, feels like peace. So here I am. A woman who lost a child she loved, a marriage she thought was real, and a family that never really was. But I also gained something, myself. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: sometimes the best revenge isn't payback, or gloating, or watching them fall. Sometimes the best revenge is walking away, building a life so strong and so free that they can't touch it. Melissa wanted to break me. She wanted to make sure I never stood taller than her. But here I am. Standing. Breathing. Living. And she's a ghost of her own making.